Hey folks, hope everybody's doing okay today. I'm making a video. It's very interesting. Um, what inspired me to make this video is a video I watched, and I like this guy too. How that for Evolution Harley engines made between 1985 and 1999, how that you can convert them back to the old style points ignitions for only $50, and how well it's worked out for him and some others that have done it. And I know that is right, because I made 67. I go pretty far back. When I was a teenage boy, I've owned vehicles made in the 1950s. It wasn't until my late teens, like when I was around age 17, that I got cars that were made in the 60s. And I had plenty of them because they were cheap to buy, and we lived out in the country to where we had room. It wasn't based on a driveway, it was just a lot of room. Oh well. But what I'm going to talk about, it's like the title suggests. So many of you people born later, after the mid-60s, you have been bullshitted. You have been totally deceived and fooled by these damn car manufacturers and for all these vehicles they're building nowadays. Now, there are some improvements on the newer vehicles, like in 1973, they started building a front bumper and a rear bumper that had the absorbers. They were like pistons with a flange plate on the back, and if the bumper got hit from the front of the back, it would go in about 3 inches, rather than damaging the vehicle itself. Okay, that was an improvement. Let's see, and what else? Well, power steering, but that was in the 60s. Or most of them, was in the early 60s. Some even in the 50s had power steering. Okay, but you people have been BS to think those cars were gas guzzlers and all this stuff. You know what? Do you know that is not true at all? Because I have owned so many of those older cars in the 50s. Let's see, I had a 59 GMC pickup, a 56 Ford Fairlane, a 1957 Ford station wagon. Okay, those are the 50s cars I owned. Then 60s cars, a 62 Ford Falcon, a 61 Ford pickup, a 62 GMC pickup, a 67 Ford Fairlane, a 67 Mercury Cougar. Okay, and here's something I can tell y'all. Those vehicles, based on the weight, got better gas mileage than cars do today based on their weight. Because you take today a full-size pickup, for example. Let's just use that as an example. Or a full-size four-door car. Do you know the same car from the 1960s, some of them got even better gas mileage, or the same gas mileage, for example. Like, here's some vehicles I have. 98 Dodge Ram extended cab. Okay, it weighs right at 4,400 pounds. I have a 2002 Ford Super Crew, four-door, which is a Super Crew cab. It weighs right at 4,400 pounds. And then I have a 89 Cadillac, four-door. It's a Cadillac Brougham, and it still has the mechanical fuel pump on a 307 V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor, and it weighs 4,600 pounds. You know that 4,600 pound Cadillac with that carburetor is more responsive than both of the trucks. Plus, it gets better gas mileage. It does. And it gets better gas mileage, and it weighs more than those trucks. And it's more responsive. Go figure, it's more responsive. And that's with a mechanical 4-barrel carburetor. As to where the Ford truck and the Dodge Ram, they have port fuel injection. 8 fuel injectors, MAF sensors, idle air control valves, all these gizmos on them. Why does the Cadillac more responsive and get better gas mileage? Explain that, people. Explain that. See, you've been BS'd. I know this because when I was working for Hydrill, okay, this was in the year 2000 to 2004. Okay, I live in Houston, Texas, southeast Houston, Texas. I drove from here to Tomball, Texas, on Grant Road off of 249, which was an exact 41 miles one way. Okay, round trip per day was 92 miles a day. Let's see. Yeah, it was 92 miles by the time I'd get back to my house. So let me and I didn't go out for lunch or anything. So let me think. No, actually, that had to be 45 and a half miles one way. Yeah, it had to be, because I remember it was 92 miles round trip per day. And I didn't make any stops going to work or coming back. And I know for a fact that Cadillac, look, a 4,600 pound 4-door car, it got 25 miles to the gallon. I know it did. I know it did. Because I would fill it up, okay, full of gas. And it has like a 24-gallon fuel tank. And you figure those miles, 92 miles a day, round trip, on the Houston Freeway to Tomball. Alright, and every 4 days I had to fill it up. But see, that 4th day, it would get there. So you got 4 days of 92 miles round trip. Or no. Yeah, right, because I was off Saturday and Sunday. Okay, 4 days of 92 miles round trip. And then the 4th day, I would fill it up before I left work at a gas station that was over in Tomball, because I'd be getting close to empty. And I have calculated that, people, that's 25 miles a gallon. And then a car that big, because the 89 Brougham was not like the 89 Sedan DeVille or the Seville. It is a big car, a very long car, like these 1970s Cadillacs were. It's called the Brougham model. But that's a fact, you know. And here's something else. When I was 16 years old, okay, we lived out in the country. And my mother owned a 67 Chevrolet Impala with the 283 V8 in it, automatic transmission, the whole 9 yards. And Houston, from where we lived in Romney, Texas, Houston back then to my dad's house was exactly 336 miles. And people, that car got 24 miles per gallon. And again, you're talking about a full-size 4-door car. And it got 24 miles to the gallon. And, you know, then there's also a lot of talk, well, today's engines last longer. No, they don't. Now, many might, let me tell you why, because here's something that is a fact. I know this from my youth. See, those that are older and were actually mechanics when they were teenagers, like me, for example. I'm age 67. We have too many things to compare with to know what we know and how you people have been bullshitted. Okay, because you take, you know how these cars supposedly last long. Yeah, they would last just as long, cars that were made in the 1960s and 70s, but here's the deal. People didn't maintain their cars back then the way they do today. I did, but I don't know why other people didn't, because back then a person could have a good car. But from the time that car was new, like in the 60s or in the 70s, and after 2 or 3 years, you could pull the dipstick out and the oil was black and there was sludge. And you could ask a person, don't you ever change your oil? And they'd say, no, I don't do that. I don't have time. People just didn't do it. They just didn't do it. They didn't change air cleaners and they didn't change oil in cars back then. The majority of people, a lot did, but most people just did not. They just did not, and it had nothing to do with the type of oil. Oil is not improved. That's a bunch of bullshit too. It's because people just didn't do it. You know, I don't know why people started doing oil maintenance and air filter and coolant maintenance, because back then they didn't. Even wintertime, people that lived in colder climates, they'd never even put antifreeze in their radiators. They'd let their damn block crack. But now people, the majority of people, don't do that anymore. Now, I don't know what that's about. That's just the difference of the generations of people and how they cared or whatever. But you have all been BS. You think cars are better when they're not, because cars I remember in the past, like my 67 Fairlane had a 289 V8 automatic 4-door. My 67 Mercury Cougar had a 289 with an automatic. I had a 64 XL Galaxy. That's just mentioning some of the V8 cars I've had. And people, those got better gas mileage than these full-size vehicles do. Nowadays, anything with even with either a V6 or a V8 does not get as good a gas mileage as those cars got back then. But you've been told lies by advertisers and by marketers. You've been told lies, is what it is. You believe things that are not true. Also, a points ignition. It was just as responsive as an electronic ignition, because an electronic ignition, you know, most of the time in a car is only putting out a red spark, and you're supposed to have a blue spark to get full efficiency, you know, for your ignition to be right. But you know, most points ignitions, they have that blue spark that you need. And you didn't have to change those points that often. Not that often at all. It's just a matter of keeping them clean, which many cars that had points back then, a lot of people drove those cars 70,000 miles and never had to change those ignition points. That's a fact, people. Because I remember, I lived those days. I knew older people, you know, like my parents, you know, my mother that had the 67 Impala Chevrolet. Before that, she had a 63 Impala Chevrolet. And I remember the gas mileage those cars got and how easy they were to maintain. And things didn't go wrong all the time like cars do today. So you've all been BS, told lies. Auto building has gone back asswards, people. It's gone backwards. Because if you could ever get in a nice 65 Ford Galaxy or a 65 Chevrolet or a good old 65 Chrysler Imperial, or even the Chrysler or the Dodge Fury 3, full-size Chrysler Mopar car. If you could get in those the way they were back then and drive one, you would see exactly what I'm talking about. And they didn't break all the time. All you have to worry about on those is just like radiator hoses or a fan belt, your tires. And I don't even think that the brakes have improved. Not really, because when I was a teen, every car I owned as a teenager had four-wheel drum brakes, and they did just fine. You know, it's just a matter of them being adjusted right. And many cars had over 100,000 miles, and they have the same brake shoes and brake drums on them. You see? But I was inspired to make this video, and I'm going to put a link to this video in that guy's forum, you know, of what I'm talking about. You know, and I agree with him. Points ignition on a Harley Davidson. If the people can do that on their Evo, do it to it. You're better off. And it'll last longer that way. So you get that to where it's got a good blue spark. And man, you're ready to go. That's going to last, man. And fuel injection, it's not better. No, it's not. All that's doing, you're just spending a bunch of money. Like, because explain this to me. What about my 89 Cadillac that weighs 4,600 pounds? There's no fuel injection, but it's just as responsive. It's just as responsive. When you rev it, it doesn't hesitate. Yeah, I'm getting over a cold. Okay, but let's see, is there anything I want to add here? But, you know, it's a matter. See, anybody born after 1965, generally speaking, the higher majority, see, y'all only, here's the only thing y'all have to go by. What you've been told, heard on the television, advertising, or repair garages, you know. But see, you don't have anything to compare with like a person my age does. It's those people of us that have owned 50s and 60s cars. See, we have something, what we own now, late model vehicles, and then we have something to compare with. So, we know what most of you people that were born after 1965 do not know about what is true. And of course, marketers going to say, oh yes, and before the 1980s, cars were gas guzzlers. No, they weren't. They got better gas mileage based on their size than what cars get today. That's an absolute fact. And yeah, you don't have anything that gets what a small Toyota or Nissan gets. Nothing got that good of mileage because they didn't make anything that small. Okay? But anyway, hope y'all are all having a great day, and this is Earl.